Howdy. This is Ed, the CNC Dude, live in Venice, Florida, on the Gulf Coast of Florida, just south of about an hour south of Tampa and 30 minutes south of Sarasota. Wearing my one of my Haas hats here. I also have a right there. A friend of mine sent me that button. It happens to have my name on it, but it's from the Boston Teachers Union. I used to be from the Boston area, and there was a fellow named Ed Doherty that was running for. He actually ran for mayor of Boston once. He did not win. I remember the first 5-axis shop I worked at. I had moved to New Hampshire, and I had some of those bumper stickers inside my toolbox. And these new guys I was working with came over and were looking at my name and says Ed Doherty for mayor. And I realized that they didn't know that I wasn't that Ed Doherty. So I told them I was running for mayor of Rochester, New Hampshire, which was the town we were in. And they're like, "Oh, really?" So I gave them all bumper stickers and said, "Yeah, make sure everybody's got a bumper sticker because I want everybody to vote for me." So they were very gullible. So us Boston guys, and once we get out into the hinterlands, like to play jokes on people. Am I jiggling this camera? All right. Oh, my topics for today. I've been very, very busy. I mean, this is supposed to be almost my retirement year, and I've actually taken on way more stuff than I should. I got my drag bike engine I need to put together. I'm supposed to be at a race next week in Valdosta, Georgia for a 3-day race, or I can stay home and race a 2-day race. We're going to a baseball game today with me and my drum and bugle corps friends from Boston. We're in a group called the Boston Crusaders Senior Drum and Bugle Corps. I played snare drum. My wife played a soprano bugle, which is like a trumpet. And we used to all march together. As kids, we were in competitive drum and bugle corps. And my cohort, Sydney, here is growling. Don't growl. What are you growling at, Sydney? I think it's just the Amazon guy. She's on guard to make sure the UPS man doesn't come in the house. It was the FedEx guy. Okay. So we're going to the ball game today, and Tampa Bay Rays playing the Red Sox. And I am one of the only ones that converted to the local team, the Tampa Bay Rays, and everybody else will have Red Sox gear on. So in Boston, I'm kind of like excommunicated from Red Sox Nation. So, but I kind of like it. I have fun with it. Of course, my wife and my mother-in-law will be in Red Sox gear as well. All right, what do I want to talk about today? Let's see. I was talking with another CNC machinist friend about the cost of living and pay. And we were talking about how rents have gone up a ton in our area, but I think in a lot of the country. It's probably not everywhere, but the rents have almost doubled in our area. Now, Florida is a little bit different because we have a lot of people moving here from everywhere, and we also have retirees. The cost of living wasn't as high here. So if we came from Boston and you had a house up there, like my sister sold their house up there, which they paid like maybe not even 200,000 for, and they got like almost $700,000 for it. So that's like people that are retiring coming down with this extra money, and they'll look at a house down here and go, "Oh, that's only $180,000. Oh, I could pay cash for that." Where that's like an average house. Now that's in my neighborhood right out here. The prices have gone up like double in like 3 years, and the rents have also doubled. We had somebody that lived next door from Canada, and their son, who was living with them, probably in his mid-30s, was working at State Farm Insurance. I think that's the one with the red, guys, red hats. And the landlord doubled the rent, so they said, "We're getting out of here." They had to find another place. Luckily, they found another place. I think they actually bought a house. So, but we've been noticing that the rents in our area, because we have Sarasota County is considered to be technically an affluent community, but your average worker, because we have a lot of restaurants and stuff around here. You got your servers, your waiters, waitresses, kitchen help, cooks. There's a lot of opportunity for them around here, but I wouldn't say it's a ton of pay. And then you got manufacturing guys, like we're training machinists. Like when we first 9 years ago started the course, and machinists were going into the industry, they were getting offers of like 11 to $12 an hour. And we had another company come down here called Air Products. They'd moved a big project down here, and they needed welders, and it turns out they also needed machinists, and they were willing to pay $15 an hour 9 years ago. And of course, all the people that got offers for 12 went right over to the $15 an hour. And that company that offered 12, which is probably one of the biggest employers in our county, said, I think we need to start going up on our pay. And that's been 9 years ago. So in our discussion with my fellow machinist from the Michigan area, he was saying that, oh, the rents are up. It's just supply and demand. I said, well, what happens when I saw an article in which a whole apartment complex, they were given 30-day notice, had to give out because it was being converted to condos. And then they had to go find a place, and they realized that anything out there was like double the price. Like, oh, it's like a sticker shock. So we're doing some analysis. Like I showed the paycheck from my first machining job in 1985, and I was in my late 20s. And I made 1985 was about $9.50 an hour, which doesn't sound like much now, but if you equate the cost of living of about 2 to 2.5%, that would be like $23 an hour now. That's entry level, and I only had not even 6 months of training, my first machinist job. And I think I was working in auto parts before that, so that was lower pay than that. But that pay was adequate for me to afford my own apartment and a used car and stuff like that. I remember my dad, who was a high school graduate, was a produce man at a grocery store, and he supported our whole family with that pay. And he had a second job on the side, but he's high school graduate, had a VA loan in the house, and that was it. My mother stayed at home, like mid 1960s, late 1960s, and I would have thought by our when we became like that age that even things would even be better. Now we have the standard now is a two-income family, which means if you have kids, you got to put them somewhere, daycare, in school, got to pick them up, stuff like that. But in my day, my mother was stay-at-home mom, which I think personally, I think that's the way it should be. That somebody should be home all day, maybe up until your teens. So anyway, it's the way things have gone in this country. So you got cost of living and pay. So pay obviously is not kept up, and that's just not in the machining industry. But now we're coming into the manufacturing debacle in which the retirement tsunami is hit, and now we need machinists in the worst way, and nobody's been training them in the meantime. They were just hiring people like me. I worked at Lockheed Martin, and everybody there was like 50 and up, and that's 14 years ago. So um, all those people are gone and retired, and they realized about 5 years ago that they're not filling the gaps. They're running out of the well has run out of the older people. Nobody's been training anybody in the middle. So they need to get in front of it. But a lot of companies haven't. They just keep on putting the ad out there and hopefully 10 people show up. Or they'll call me and say, send me your best machinist. And I said, I can't even send you my worst machinist because they've already been scooped. All the puppies have been taken. So I know a college up in upstate New York, like in the Albany area. They pretty much said, and they pump out a lot of machinists, like maybe 80 to 100 a year. They said that you need to, as a company, you need to be on board and snag a person before they graduate, and maybe have them doing on-the-job training at your company, because do not wait until the end. You won't find any, and you need to be involved with our program as an advisor and stuff like that. So hopefully this rents going up, cost of houses going up, pay not keeping up, will hopefully level out at some point. I think something, nothing's proactive, it's always reactive. The other topic I had was talking about machines and CNC and CAD CAM. Now, I'm very pro Haas, obviously, but I've run many machines. Actually, the first company I worked for was a machine tool dealer. I worked in the tool room where I got that $9.50 an hour pay. And we sold Japanese machine tools. And they were the king of the industry at the time. And right around the late 80s, we had two companies, Fidel and Haas, came out with their lo the people at the time called them like a cheap toilet paper machine. They're like, you buy them for 3 years, you throw them away. They're not as good as a Moriseki or a Kitamura or an Akuma. But it turns out they can hold their own, and if you go on the cost of machine and stuff like that, they all have a niche with what you wanna do. Like at Lockheed, we didn't have any Haas machines. We had an old clunky Fidel, and I think the only reason they kept that is the guy who was running it was been there like 20 something years, and they didn't wanna upset him and give him a new machine. They kept on fixing that thing all the time. But we had brands in there like Mitsui Seiki, Mazak, Milturns, high level machines, for sure. But as machinists, we don't get to choose the machines. We don't get to choose the tools. We don't get to choose the CAD CAM system. We got to learn to work with what we got. So when I learned CAD CAM, I was at a mold shop. I was the CNC guy running an Akuma mill and some Prototrack mills. We used to program in something called SmartCam. That was the first thing I learned. And then I eventually went to another company, and we were running something called TechSoft, which I think became ProCam or something. Then I went to another company, and they were running SurfCam. And went to another company, and then we were getting moved from SmartCam to Esprit. And I went to another company, and they were running Mastercam. And then we also had a seat of Bobcad, which was like a local CAD CAM company in the Clearwater, Florida area. But they're all adequate. It's like anything. You get used to something and you believe that's the best because you can use it properly. But I think the real uh, thing is learning how to adjust and learn new products, learning how to run a different machine. Like how do you run something with a Fanuc control? Haas stuff is all based on the Fanuc control, and they just added some more buttons that were common buttons, which I still don't understand why Fanuc doesn't do that, but they are like the king of the controls. I used to hear the old stories from the early 80s. The problem was getting a control that would be not burn out and go on fire. Fanuc was the one that won the battle, and they became the standard. And there was another smaller control called Yasnak, which was kind of a duplicate of the Fanuc in some ways. And the U.S. machines weren't keeping up, like Cincinnati and those kind of companies, uh, Giddings and Lewis, places like that. So as far as machines and stuff like that, CAD CAM, I think sometimes we get like you got Mastercam, we got Fusion 360, you're using Power Mill or you're using HSM inside of SolidWorks. It's all use what you got. In the end, we still have to be machinists. We got to learn how to use what we got to make what we need to make. And I guess there's some bragging rights. This is better than that. Yours stinks. Uh, so everybody would talk about what machine should I buy? Should I buy a Doosan or should I buy a Mazak? Should I buy a Haas? And then the Haas guys always say there's like you're either pro Haas or you're a Haas hater. So we have one student that graduated and he has his own company now. He has about 6 Doosans, just bought a horizontal machine. He's not even 30 years old, but he'll go to the Haas dealer when they had the HFO day to get the free hot dogs and stuff. But he doesn't buy any Haas's. But he wants to hang out with the other companies. I get it, and I don't think any other companies really do in our area do like demo days like Haas does. But they're kind of the king of the hill as far as how many machines are out there and how popular they are. And they're very big on education and promo. So that's their thing. And I think all the other companies benefit from us being a promoter, like the Titans of CNC. I follow some guys on a podcast called Machinist Therapy Hotline, and they're from all over the country. I think one guy's in New Zealand, and they're pretty funny, but there's CNC guys just talking about their average life, about the machine going down and what they have to fix, and but they none of them have Haas machines. They hate Titans CNC. They just, but in the end, it's personally, I'm very pro Titans of CNC. I think his format is spot on, as an Englishman would say. So, he's the blueprints, the process, everything is pretty much in line with my experience going through the industry. So, I can't say enough about his projects and program. I wish he had actually continued on with that. He seems to have kind of walked away from it. I understand he wants everybody doesn't want to teach the same thing all the time. You want to kind of move up, myself included. Um, I always like to learn. I get a lot of joy out of like learning something along with the students. I'm learning something new. Like is a thing on gears here. I know about gears. I've never made gears. I know people that kind of specialize in gears. I knew about gear hobby equipment. This is something you'd hear about. It's like mold making. I didn't know anything about mold making until I worked at a mold shop, and then I learned about mold making. So, but we have a high school engineering team next to our classroom, and they entered this competition called the FIRST, or First Competition. Started from a man named Dean Kamen from, he lives in Bedford, New Hampshire, and I lived in Manchester, New Hampshire, and his company was just downtown in Manchester. So we all knew of Dean Kamen, and he invented the Segway, and he invented an articulating wheelchair, stuff like that. He was a very great inventor, and I believe he did not complete college, but he's extremely smart. So we knew about the first competition and what it means. So these engineering kids have to put something together. They came over, but it's what they don't know. They'll come over and like, can you make this gear with these internal splines and stuff? We're like, oh, we don't have that kind of tooling. They just don't understand. They're like, can't you make everything? So we're looking at like how to do internal splines with a rotary broach on a CNC lathe or a mill. Of course, it's a little bit of an expense up front, but that's like the more advanced way of doing internal stuff. The gears I didn't realize have special cutters called involute cutters. So we're trying to do more research on that, how to create gears. Now, of course, they're not making like gears for racing trucks like my friend Devin makes in Maine, who was an instructor at Central Maine Community College, but he has his own company now, and he makes a lot of rear end parts for race trucks and internal parts, gears, splines, axles. So he gave me a lot of uh, knowledge about everything's in the machinery's handbook, all the data. You just got to make sure that they're designing it according to engineering standards. Just like there's engineering standards for screws, nuts and bolts, all that kind of stuff. There's standards for gear manufacture. So I'm learning that also. So we're going to attempt to make some probably gears out of aluminum. It's just a little cart that runs around. It's not like we're making something that's driving the Titanic or something like that. But we're going to learn. So we're starting off at the beginning and learning how to do that. All right, I'm almost at the 20-minute mark. I babbled enough. So we're going to the ball game today. Leaving here about 2 in about 3 hours. I'm going to poke away at my engine a little bit. I was planning on testing the engine tomorrow. I don't think that's going to happen, but it's half assembled. I have to put it's a motorcycle 4-cylinder engine. I have the bottom end together, which is the crankcases, the transmission, the crankshaft are all assembled. And I have to put the cylinder on with the rings. They were all freshly bored and honed. Check the ring end gaps. Excuse me, that's my monitor for my computer who keeps me from being on the computer all day. And so I got to put the cylinders on, and I got to treat the copper gaskets that are underneath, make sure I got the stack correct. My piston, the cylinder head clearance has to be 40,000. So when we put the cylinder head on without the head gasket, make sure the piston does not hit the head. That means when the rod stretches, it won't hit the head because the gasket is about 43 thousandths thick, and they say the stretch is approximately 30 to 40 thousandths. So at 10, 12,000 RPM. So I got to put all that together, but I got to do that in all one fell swoop, torque everything down, and install the overhead cams and time the cams. We put a degree wheel on there with an indicator, good indicator practice. We measure the exhaust timing opening and the intake timing opening. We set it to certain numbers and get the shims right, feel the gauges. We're working in thousands there. Get that all bolted up, and that'll be it. Okay, thanks, and I'll talk to you later. Yep, thank you.